Welcome back to Slothboxx. I'm James Lupton. This is Lyndon Dixon, and we're doing a 2023 Slothboxx Awards. Lyndon, how are you, mate?
I'm all good, mate. But you saying that, it's just like it's been a weird year for boxing. Do you know what I mean? We're finally here, and I feel like there's been loads of boxing in the past couple of weeks. But mate, what a year it's been.
It's it's certainly flown by, but they say
Yeah,
time flies when you're having fun, and I think the boxing fans can certainly say they've had fun
Mm,
this year. We've had some massive, massive fights and some major breakthroughs heading into 2024 as well. So fingers crossed for another massive year in
mm,
boxing. I'm going to start with the biggest talking point at the moment, and that is the fighter of the year.
yes.
There seems to be three names in the mix on social media. We've picked different fighters ourselves.
Mhm.
I'll let you go with yours first of all. Who have you
Yeah,
picked?
I've gone for the man, one of my favourite boxers ever. I think Terence Crawford. Now the thing is, I know he only fought once this year, but he fought in the fight that we've been asking for like 6, 7 years against Errol Spence, and the way he just dismantled him. The thing is, when they got in the ring, it was like, right, it's a real flip of the coin. Who's going to win? Who edges it? Blah blah blah. Crawford just walked it, and for me, putting on a performance like that against another one of the greats, he's got to be my fight of the year. What about you? Who you gone for?
I've gone with Inoue. I think obviously he's had two fights this year. He's sort of stepped up in weight and gone straight for the man in Steph Fulton and beat him convincingly. And then more recently, Marlon Tapales to go undisputed at the weight class is it's just ridiculous. The geezer, he lives by his nickname, the Monster.
Yeah,
He he's unbelievable and he's such a good fighter to watch. He's one fighter who's on my bucket list to watch live. Um, he just dismantles anybody and everybody. There doesn't seem to be any way to stop him or getting away from him. He is just destructive. And I get the point with Crawford, and I mean, what a performance Crawford against
yeah,
Spence. And the argument on social media is, especially with Crawford's camp, is that yes, he only had one fight this year, but it was against a pound for pound star in Errol Spence.
yeah.
So does that trump fighting two good fighters in fighting one great fighter?
Mm,
And it's a fair argument, you know. I think they're the two front runners. Devin Haney gets an honourable mention. He's had a great year as well.
yeah.
However, there was a little bit of controversy. Some people felt that he didn't dominate in the Lomachenko fight, could have gone the other way. However, he has had a great year. Look at his record that shows he's had some great wins there. Lomachenko and Prograis, they're no mugs, the two of them.
Two huge names.
Massive. And like I said at the start, it's been a great year for boxing. And
Yeah.
just those three names and those fights just prove how good this year has been. We'll move swiftly on to trainer of the year. I'll let you go with your first pick there.
For me, I'm going to go with Ben Davison, I think, purely because of I feel like anyone he's with, he has an impact on. I mean, I'll try and keep it short and sweet, but you look at the impact he's had on Lee Wood, turning him from a British sort of top British fighter to a world beater. Then most recently, his impact on Joshua. He was only with Joshua for like I don't know 7, 8 weeks, and with people are finally saying that was the old Joshua in the ring against Otto Wallin. For me, what's changed from his last fight? Working with Ben Davison, and for me, that's the impact. And then one of my personal favourites, Jordan Gill, just Gill all of a sudden moves away from Dave Coldwell, he's been with for like 5 or 6 years, with Ben Davison and his team for a few weeks, and puts on a great performance against Connon. And for me, I can't wait to see what his fighters do in 2024.
You mentioned they're taking Lee Wood from a British level fighter to a
Mm,
world level fighter. Even the Jordan Gill against Conlan and Anthony Joshua against Otto Wallin, you could argue that both of them potentially were underdogs going into that fight. A lot of people felt that Wallin was a banana skin for AJ, although AJ was the bookie's favourite. A lot of people were backing Otto
yeah,
Wallin to win that fight and said how much of a dangerous fight that is. And he again dismantled him with ease. It was the old AJ back,
mm,
and it was great to see. Again, Jordan Gill against Mick Conlan. Nobody, myself included, saw that coming.
no,
Yet he's put in his performance. And what I will say of Ben Davison is, although he's not my pick for trainer of the year, I want to give a mention to Lee Wiley, his right hand man, because
yes,
he seems to be a big part of the brains behind the operation there. Um, what an addition he was. I remember Lee
Mm,
White from years and years ago. He was just some guy on social media, on Twitter, who would basically break down, analyze fights, and picked up on these things. And Ben Davison saw that and thought, this geezer's useful. Brought
mm.
him to his camp, and the impact he's had on the fighters is huge. I mentioned he's not my pick. My pick has to go to Andy Lee.
Oh,
Similar reasons, really, as Ben Davison. I look at Joseph Parker and the improvements.
mm,
Although Joseph Parker was a world champion, a little while back, he sort of declined quite heavily, in my opinion. Although he was, still around the sort of top 10 heavyweights, he never really impressed me too much.
yeah,
Um, but his last fight, the Wilder fight, was just ridiculous. The performance was unreal, and it was a game plan from Andy Lee. But not only that, that was his fourth fight in 2023.
crazy for a heavyweight.
The activity there is insane. And okay, they're not all, top level and they're not all Deontay
Mm,
Wilders. However, the activity to stay active, and I mentioned the game plan against Wilder, also Andy Lee's young prospect and Paddy Donovan, who I rate very, very highly. 3 wins this year, but again, improving in each fight and improving against better opposition. His last fight, Danny Ball, a great performance, and looks like for a massive 2024. He had a few promotional issues, but he now seems settled. And as I mentioned, he's with Andy Lee, big prospect, and he is the reason that Andy Lee is a trainer today. Andy Lee said he would not train any fighter until Paddy Donovan give him a phone call. He's the reason that he is on the other side of the ropes.
mm.
He's my trainer of the year. But again, Ben Davison is well within a shout. And to be honest with you, there's a few others as well. You know, Brian McIntyre with Terence Crawford, Bill Haney with Devin Haney, and Anoy's trainer as well. You've got to give them all mentions because
Yeah,
if we're mentioning those guys as fighter of the year, it's not just a one man in the ring, it's the man
exactly.
in the ring as well. Um, Fight of the year, I've gone with what a lot of people on social media have gone with, and that is a Shake Foster against Hernandez. Now, I saw all the hype about this on social media and I thought, right, I need to go and watch this and check this
Mm,
out. So I went onto the zone, went back and found the full fight, had a little look, and it's unreal. For me, it's originally I had Crawford Spencer my fight of the year. Then I changed my mind. It was too one-sided for a fight of the year. For
yeah,
me, fight of the year has to be a back and forth battle. And that's exactly what Foster and Hernandez was. Um, it was just insane. The pace, the just everything about the fight. I can't even describe it, but everyone who's seen it will know exactly what I'm talking about. And Shake Foster wins that with a last round stoppage. And it was insane. For you, Lyndon, tell us who you've picked for your, or what fight
I've
you
gone
picked.
for Taylor Cameron number one purely because I feel like that that whole fight was the build. It was it's the homecoming, and it's like great for Katie Taylor, but so many people and Chantel Cameron spoke about this. They were written off so much, weren't the best whilst they were out there in Ireland, and she ripped up the script. But whilst ripping up the script, I feel like halfway through the fight, it gave Katie Taylor a bit of a kick up the arse that she needed during the fight. And I feel like from sort of round four onwards, we really did see one of the fights of the year. It was back and forth. For me, Cameron definitely won that fight, which she did anyway. But for me, seeing two of the best go at it like that, we see that quite a lot in women's boxing because, well, the pool isn't as big as the men's boxing, but like I say, seeing two of the best go at it like that, for me, I couldn't really. When you asked me what's your fight of the year the other day, I was thinking I have to pick that one.
No, definitely, it's definitely one of my favourite fights from the year. A great, great fight. Um, let's move on to because you mentioned obviously there about it was meant to be Kate Taylor's homecoming and she lost that. So let's go to upset of the year. And we're not talking about Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren working together for the first time. We're talking about in the ring. Tell me who you've picked for this one or what your
I've,
upset of the year was.
I've gone for the fight I've just mentioned. Taylor Cameron won. That is a huge upset, and that's the thing. I'll go into it a little bit more. The whole thing was when's Katie Taylor going to fight in Ireland again? When's she going to do it? When's she going to do it? Then it finally got announced, and it was she's fighting Chantel Cameron. She's a decent boxer. And for me, I was like, hang on, no, she's a little bit more than that. She's a cracking boxer herself. And then seeing her in fight week, her demeanor and stuff like that, I was like, oh, I feel like she could win this. But then on social media, I'd watched the weigh-in, I'd watched the press conference, and then straight after it's, "Oh, I can't wait for Katie Taylor to win. Who does she fight next? Is she going to rematch Serrano?" And I'm like, that I can't see her getting past Chantel Cameron. And then the bell rings. Katie Taylor looked emotional on the ring walk, and for me, it was right. Now's the time for Cameron to, like I said before, rip up that script, and that's exactly what she did. And the difficult thing is, with it being in Ireland, you don't know if the fans are going to sway the judges. But for me, I think Cameron did enough. Like she got the right result on the night. She did enough to sway those judges and upset the apple cart in Ireland.
No, definitely. For me, I've got to mention one fight we've already mentioned. That was Joseph Parker and Deontay Wilder.
Mm,
I'm one man who didn't give Parker a chance in that fight.
me neither.
Um, and I mentioned about Andy Lee. The game plan was perfect, so that does get a mention. But the upset for me was Zhilei Zhang stopping Joe Joyce not once but twice
Mm,
this year. Um, Again, not an expected outcome. Not to say that Zhang was underrated or a poor fighter, not by any stretch of the imagination. However, it was Joe Joyce's granite chin, so we thought
yeah.
the fact that he got stopped emphatically in both fights within this year, for me, that's got to be my upset of the year or upsets of the year because
Mm,
it was just crazy and, as I mentioned, just completely unexpected. And that's why we love boxing, heavyweight boxing.
yes.
That one punch can change everything, and it seems to have potentially changed Joe Joyce's career going forward for sure.
Mm,
We've mentioned fighter of the year. Let's go British fighter of the year.
hmm
We've both picked the same person. Um, I'll let you start with your honourable mention first of all.
I think it's my honourable mention has to be Lee Wood. We mentioned him earlier. I mean, for me, it's the Warrington performance. Again, it was he was just written off, and I feel like the whole Ben Davison gym loved being the underdog. And time after time again, I remember a couple of years back now when Lee Wood fought against Zhukan, and it was this Zhukan's pretty much won every round of his career, outthrown every every round of his career, and I was just like, I don't know, I just feel like Lee Wood's got it, and I put a tenner on, and that day Lee Wood won me something like 400 quid, and I was like, okay, this he's got something about him because that's the thing, he stopped Zhukan, no one had ever done it before, and I feel like since that moment, he's just gone and gone and gone. I mean, you look at the Conlan fight where he stopped him late on. Everyone remembers that knockout when he knocks him out of the ring. Then he fights Lara, stops him too after he loses, and then he fights Warrington again. And for me, I just feel like that man is the it's a proper underdog story, and I just love that so much.
Absolutely. But we both have picked the same fighter of the year, British fighter of the year.
Mm,
As a man who's heading into 2024 as the mandatory for the WBC world title, and that is Nick Ball. Um, Mini Mike Tyson, Little Wrecking
yes,
Ball. What an exciting fighter and
mm,
man who sort of come out of nowhere really a couple of years ago.
definitely.
And this year in 2023 really has pushed on and progressed really well. His last win against Isaac Dogboe really cemented that, Dogboe is a good world-class fighter
Mm,
and he had no answer for Nick Ball whatsoever. And it showed another side to Nick Ball as well. I mentioned he was a wrecking ball mini Mike Tyson, but he boxed Dogboe,
yeah.
and the performance there warrants his mandatory position in my opinion, as a WBC number one and going in for that world title next year.
Mm.
What did you pick him for your fighter of the year?
For me, it's the same reason pretty much. I remember watching him against Lamar, and it was wow. Like you said, the mini Mike Tyson, the wrecking ball thing, and basically everything that Dev Sarni said on Twitter, I saw with my own eyes. But then when he fought the Bue, I just couldn't believe it because I remember my dad asked me that weekend, "Is like, oh, what boxing's on?" And I told him, I was like, "Oh, there's a great fight. It's going to be really even. Nick Ball against Isaac Dogbue." I was like, "We've got to watch it." And then we watched it, and Dad was like, "Are you sure this is the fight you was on about?" And I was like, "Yes, this was this in my head. This was supposed to be a lot more even than it was." But like you said, he just turned the talent on and outboxed him. He bullied him around the ring, was coming in and out whenever he wanted to, and then it looked like it was a tune-up fight for him. No disrespect to Isaac Debue, whatever, but that's just for me. That's just how Nick Ball looked. He looked that good, and I just can't wait, like you said, to see what happens in 2024. The fights he could be in for Frank Warren. It's going to be something special. I think that next year he really will be Queensbury's golden boy, other than Tyson Fury.
Absolutely. He's certainly pushed on to that sort of level, like I
Mm-hmm.
mentioned there, Tyson Fury. If Netball captures that world title, he could move up in weight, etc.
Yeah.
He's got the world at his feet really there, and it is an exciting, exciting year for netball. A female fighter of the year. Um, we've both gone for different people, but
Yeah.
both gone for a Lauren. We'll start with you, Lauren, first.
My Lauren is someone who's been on the channel quite a few times, and I feel like that's why I'm so close and aware of her career. For me, it's Lauren Parker. This year has been such a rubbish year for her in terms of what she wanted to do. She wanted to win the European, but early in the year, and that's the thing. The fight was scheduled for pretty early on. It was spoke about pretty early on. Then she injured her back, and she went through it quite privately. All the struggles, the therapy she had to go through just to sort of walk and run again. And then the fight finally got scheduled for the European, and then it got postponed because her opponent pulled out. And then she finally gets it towards the end of the year. And I just feel like there's no one that deserves that female fighter title of the year more than her, purely because of the shit she's been through. She's really, really been through it. And the thing is, she's another one. I can't help it. I think it's the fact I've been a Newcastle fan. I love an underdog, and for me, all the rubbish that's been thrown at her, no one would have complained if she retired. If she decided to hang up the gloves and say, right, it's just been a bit too much for me. I'm just going to leave it there. But no, she battled through it and is now the European champion. And then the fights that people are talking about now, Emma Dolan, and then for her titles as well. Emma Dolan's another one for an honourable mention for me, definitely for British female fighter of the year at least. But Lauren Parker, I'm repeating myself now, but what she's been through to come out the other side of it with her hand raised, I can only applaud. Now,
So,
talk to me about your Lauren.
Lauren Price for me, the first female to win a British title
Mm,
ever. So she's in history there already, um, and already on the cusp of world titles.
yeah,
She's not long-term professional. She's very active, and for me, just dominant. Somebody you mentioned earlier about the pool and the depth of the women's divisions. It's not that deep, and we know that,
mm,
which is why some fighters who have got the talent they can be fast tracked a lot quicker than other fighters. And that's the case with Lauren Price. She does stand out from the rest. She will do that. She's an Olympian. Um, and for me, looking at potentially a world title next year, and I think she deserves it. I think she's certainly got the ability to do so.
mm,
But for like I say, really the icing on the cake for me was the first ever British title won by a female is Lauren Price. And like I say, that's her name in history books forever. You can't take that away from her. That's, in 20, 30 years' time, a pub quiz question that who's the first female British title holder? And the answer is Lauren Price. Let's move on to prospect of the year. Who has impressed you the most this year, Lyndon?
Who's impressed me the most? It has to be the man, Ben Shalom's man anyway, Adam Azim. He's fought 3 times, and the thing is, well, with the boxer stable at least, if you look at their prospects, there's some great fighters in there. I mean, Ben Whitaker is the one that sticks out when I think about that. But the criticism of him is, yeah, he's a great prospect, but I feel like the quality needs to be stepped up that little bit quicker. Yeah, because he's clearly got the quality, but let's just see him in there with better fighters. But for Adam Azim, you can't criticise that. Each fight he's been in, it's been a step up, and he still looks leagues above. I mean, his last fight out was against I'm gonna butcher the name, but that Petitjean, and that was for the European title. And it was Petitjean's European title, but he didn't want to know. Again, I mentioned that earlier. It looked like a tune-up fight. It looked like Adam Azim had gone in there to get some rounds done, but that the man with the title did not want to know. But now his next year, his first fight is scheduled for Paulson, I think. And yeah, for me, seeing a British prospect go through the gears in his fights, it really puts a smile on my face. Seeing promoters and matchmakers do things right and sort of try and push them through quicker than the usual prospects.
Definitely. And he's definitely a name who's in the mix for my prospect of the year.
Mm,
I feel like I've been saying it for years already. He's my prospect of the year. He feels like he's been around for ages and he's
yeah,
certainly one to watch for a long time. My only gripe, and it's not with Adam as a fighter, it's more with the promoters. He's obviously skipped that British level now and gone straight
yeah,
into European. But is that because Dalton Smith's the British title holder?
Mm,
It's a fight I would love to see, but it's a
me too.
dangerous fight for both fighters. I can't see Eddie or Ben looking to put their man forward for that fight against either man. It's a mouth-watering clash that,
Mm.
but potentially one day for a world title, that's where where the money's been put up for it. Hopefully, we'll get to see that at some point. But my prospect, I feel like I'm cheating a little bit with my prospect of the year, and that's Andy Cruz.
Oh, mate,
I mean,
what a shout!
what a fighter! Fresh from the Olympics. I mean, the bloke's a joke, really. Yeah, he's only had two fights this year, but they seem to have just been against massive opposition. I think his pro debut was a 10 rounder.
Yeah,
Um, his last fight was, I can't remember his name now. It's gone to me
Straffon,
completely. Say again?
Giovanni Straffon.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, he fought Maxi Hughes.
Mm.
Um, and he stopped James Tennyson. And I think that fight against James Tennyson, that's the one where people go, oh, he's a good name. He stopped James Tennyson. If you look at Steffan's record, it's not the best record in the world, but he's an experienced and he's a dangerous guy. And to take it in your second or third fight from Andy Cruz is just insane. Like I say, we know how good he is from his amateur days.
Yeah.
We don't always see that transition into the pros. Look at Robeisy Ramirez. He's had a couple of hiccups. Even Lomachenko lost his second fight, although again it was a big step up. But Andy Cruz, like I say, I feel like I'm cheating, but he's my prospect of the year.
No, mate, no cheating there at all. I mean, I didn't even think of him when I was thinking about my prospect here, purely because of how good he already is.
Absolutely, absolutely. And sticking with sort of prospects and youngsters, and let's move on to one to watch for
Mm.
2024. First of all, your male pick.
My male one has to be, and I feel like you'll agree with an honourable mention at least, is Moses Atalma on Frank Warren's Queensberry promotion. For me, seeing a young prospect. Now, you think about when Johnny Fisher first came onto the scene, he was crushing opponents, going through them quickly, looks pretty good. But Moses Atama is doing exactly the same, but I don't know why. There's just something else about him. He just seems to have that quality. Each punch he throws, whether it's a jab or an uppercut, is as crisp as the last punch you've thrown. I just can't wait to see what he's going to do. And they're talking about him being the youngest world champion ever. Bring it on. I can't wait to see him on my screen every couple of weeks, like the good old days that I sadly missed because of my age. But seeing him go through the paces and go through the fights as he is, that's why it's my one to watch because I feel like he's going to be on our screen so much next year. It's going to be hard for him to not achieve anything.
No, absolutely. And he was my one to watch, but I had to scrub him off the list and I've replaced him. And I'll tell you why. There's good reason for that. But Moses Talma, I mean, first of all, from Kent, around where I'm from. So I
Mm,
love that, first of all. But I remember Moses from his amateur. I say I remember him as if it was ages ago. It's only obviously last year or so. But in the amateurs, and he was blowing his opponents over and he had this fearsome reputation. And they mentioned the world's youngest heavyweight champion ever. And obviously, that is currently held by Mike Tyson. And he had this fierce reputation as well. I
mm,
don't know if Moses has this feared reputation as a pro just yet.
no.
That could well be building. I mean, he seems a bit too much of a nice guy to have that fierce and Mike Tyson reputation. But what I want to see is with Frank Warren, he's trying to say he could be the youngest world heavyweight champion ever. Well, let's do that. Let's not just say it. Let's walk, give him the fights, keep him very, very active. Let's build him through these fights as well, and let's get him into position to get a world title shot before whatever age it was that Mike Tyson was when he beat Trevor Berbick back in the day.
Mm,
Let's walk the walk, not just talk the talk. So that's certainly something that I want to see from Frank and Queensbury at least. And Moses just needs to keep doing what he's doing and turning up and going through these people. Um, but yeah, he was on my list. And like I say, I crossed him out for one reason. It's a very similar reason as we mentioned about the youngest world title holder at heavyweight with Mike Tyson, Alex Winwood out in Australia.
Oh, yeah.
Now he is very, very close and he's on course. He's now ranked number one with WBC, and I think he's only had four fights. He's on course to beat the Australian record held by Jeff Fenech to become the first Australian to win a world title in history at all weights. Now, Jeff Fenech done it in, I think, six or seven fights. As I mentioned, Alex Winwood is now ranked number one. He's mandatory for the WBC. So he's two fights away from beating this record.
Mm,
Um, and speaking to his manager, they're confident on getting him a world title shot at strawweight to beat this record. And for me, that is just so exciting for somebody to make history in boxing. And break a record has been held for decades. That's what I love to see. I love to see these records broken, records made. I mentioned Lauren Price winning that British title. It's in the history books. Alex Winwood will go down in boxing history books for good
Mm.
until it's broken again. But again, he's the man to beat, not just in the ring, but, going forward in the future to beat his record of winning the world title in the fewest fights for any Australian. And it's just an unbelievable achievement if he can do it. So that's why for me, it's a massive 2024 for him. That's why he's my one to watch because he could be on course to break this record next year.
Fingers crossed.
Absolutely. You're one to watch a female fighter for next year.
I mentioned her briefly earlier, but it's Emma Dolan. And for similar reasons, you mentioned Lauren Price breaking the record, becoming the first woman to fight for a British title. Well, it looks like Emma Dolan is going to be the second. And for me, I've done a few interviews with her that people may have seen, but from where she came from about a year ago. The thing is, she's from near where I am. She's from Norwich. I'm from a small town called Wisbech. So obviously, I've heard of her and heard what she's doing. But then I'm hearing the fight she's having. I'm like, wow, she's stepping it up. And I found myself saying that in her last four fights, like, wow, she's stepping it up. The quality and quantity is just getting better and better. And like I say, she's won the Commonwealth title, I believe. And she's already been linked to fight Lauren Parker for the European. And she's also being linked to fight for that British title, the second ever female one. And for
Well,
me,
ordered by the board to fight Shannon Ryan for that
that's
title.
the one. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's going to be her first show or her first performance on telly as well. So she's been grafted. She's got these titles away from the limelight. She's done it on the small halls, and I feel like she's finally getting her deserved bit of credit. So for me, I feel like next year, hopefully, she beats Shannon Ryan because no offense, Shannon Ryan, but Emma Dolan, I feel like she's just a cracking boxer. She's got a tough story as well, and I feel like she's really one to watch for me.
Definitely. My female one to watch is an exciting fighter. She dances her way to the ring on Sky Sports, Fran Hennessy.
Mm.
Um, I love the partnership shot of her trainer, Bradley Skeet. I love to see Bradley doing really well. I've known Bradley a long time. It's good to see him transition into a trainer and see the success he's having with Fran. Fran, like I say, exciting. She's one of these fighters who, when she's fighting, I have to go and watch her.
Yeah.
I've got to make sure I'm tuned in. If she's the first fight on at 7 o'clock, if she's on, before the TV, got to watch her on YouTube, whatever it is, I need to watch Fran Hennessy. And that's what I like and what I look for in a fighter. Somebody who makes me go, right, okay, I need to watch her or I need to watch him for this reason. Somebody who's going to get me on the edge of my seat and I have to see their fight, not just catch up on the result or watch the highlights or watch the show the next morning or whatever it may be. I have to get up and watch them. And
Mm.
that for me is Fran Hennessy. Exciting and just really, really intrigued to see where she can go next year. I mentioned again the depth of women's weight divisions. They're not that deep. So how far can she go? Can she progress to titles? Could she be the third female British title holder at
Mm.
some point in 2024? So it's really exciting times for boxing and female boxing with Fran Hennessy around as well. The last one, the fight you want to see in 2024.
Definitely a biased answer in my opinion. I mean, I'll just hold my hands up and say it. For me, it's Joe Cordina against Jordan Gill. Now, Jordan Gill, probably my favourite British fighter, purely because I did my second interview with him, and since then he's just supported me so much in everything I've done. And seeing him lose against Kiko Martinez was such a tough moment for me, knowing how much it would get to him. And then when he beat Conlan the way he did, no one expected him to do it. And then his post fight interview talking about breaking up with his missus, the mental health struggles that he's been through, breaking not breaking up, but leaving Dave Caldwell, and now he's everything's on the up. And I feel like he deserves that shot at Cordina's titles. And for me, I feel like after his last performance against Conlan, he's going to give Cordina a proper fight. I really think that he could do the business over Joe Cordina. And that's the thing. I spoke to Jordan Gill about that fight, and he said he wants it. And he said, no disrespect to Joe Cordina. He's a great guy. And that's the thing. Same here. I think Joe's a great guy, but I want Jordan to take those titles off him and then finally have a fight at the Peterborough Ground, London Road.
For me, that fight again. back against Jordan because I can't see past Joe Cordina,
Yeah,
but Jordan continues to prove me wrong in fight after fight. There's fights where you think it's a little bit too far for him, a little bit out of his depth. He just finds that extra something. And you mentioned, a great guy, really nice fella, really down to earth and genuine. But the boy can fight. I mentioned, he will be the bookie's underdog. He's
yes,
my underdog. I can't see past Cordina. I think Cordina's, an elite talent.
he is.
I mean, it's a great fight. It's a good domestic dust up as well. We love to see domestic fights. And this is perfect, really, to get a domestic fight of this level at a world title level for world titles.
Mm,
It really would be exciting to see that fight. For me, I've gone for one over in the States, um, potentially the biggest fight that can be made in boxing next year, and that is Canelo and David Benavidez. Uh,
wow.
I mean, what a fight! And for me, it's a real potential passing of the sword sort of moment, passing of the
Mhm.
torch, and that where Canelo takes that little step back, should he lose, and Benavidez steps forward as, potentially the face of boxing. I mean, beating Canelo Alvarez is certainly going to put Benavidez in the pound for
Yeah,
pound rankings for sure. He's a very, very talented, and he's another one who's had a great year. He's unlucky to not be considered up there with the fighter of the year and mentioned with those guys we mentioned earlier, because he's had an unbelievable year.
yeah.
Andrade, Caleb Plant, it's just,
It's a
phenomenal year
crazy,
against
crazy
top fighters. And again, it goes back to again at the start how good this year really has been for boxing. Um, and we've not even mentioned Tank versus Ryan Garcia.
year.
Um,
No.
but like I say, it's been a great year. But yeah, Canelo Benavidez, that for me is the fight to make. We're already getting Fury U6. I couldn't put that in there.
Mm,
So that, well, I say we're getting that. We'll hopefully getting that in February. We'll wait until we see them both in the ring. But Canelo Benavidez, what a fight. What a war that would be. And like I say, that could be a potential sort of, step up moment for Benavidez to step into the crowning at the top of the pound for pound rankings. Not, he won't go straight in number one, don't get it wrong, but it's certainly put him straight into the top 10, potentially top five, because that's a huge win if he beats Canelo. But if Canelo beats Benavidez, then everybody who said he's slowing down, he's aging, they're wrong.
mm,
Because Benavidez is a very, very good fighter, and for me, the best fight to make in 2024.
100%. I feel like on a global level, I completely agree. Like if you asked me to pick one overseas, it would be that one, or Bivol Beterbiev. I feel like that would be a great fight, and I really hope we see that next year. I feel like if Callum Smith beats Beterbiev, then we might not see it, or maybe until the end of the year at least. But those two, it's a similar position. They're both great fighters, and I feel like last year with Crawford and Spence, or this year even, sorry, I feel like it's set the precedent. I feel like a few of those other fighters that are of that level, of the elites in their division, they've sort of looked at themselves and thought, yeah, maybe it's time to not care about the O or not care about pride and ego and just get in there and do it.
Absolutely, and long may it continue. And like, if we get fights like that, it's certainly going to bode well for a good 2024.
Plenty for us to talk about, mate.
Absolutely. Well, Linda, thank you very much for your time.
No, enjoyed it.